The silence inside my head was so complete, it felt like a spiritual flatline. I was a ghost in my own life, and in the final act of surrender, I walked into the woods expecting nothing. I wasn't looking for a miracle, but I was about to hear one. My world had gone silent. Not the peaceful kind, but a heavy, crushing quiet where even my own thoughts felt miles away. I was lost, and the only thing I could think to do was take a desperate, hopeless walk into the woods. It wasn't an optimistic choice. It was a surrender. I didn't go looking for an answer because I didn't have any answers left. I just needed to escape the deafening emptiness of a life that had lost its music. We live in a world that's always yelling for our attention, a constant assault on our senses. But for me, all that noise had faded into a dull drone. The silence inside my own head was scarier than any chaos outside. It was a total disconnection from myself, from other people, from God. What I didn't know, as I took those first steps onto that dirt path, was that I was walking toward an encounter. Not with a solution, but with a sound. A sound so simple, so ancient, it would begin to untangle the mess of my pain and stitch me back together. The crushing silence. Before that walk, my days were gray. It wasn't just sadness, it was a hollowing out, a kind of depression that drains the color from everything. Life felt like a room where the air was too thick to breathe, and the windows were painted black. My spirit was in a deep, dreamless sleep, and nothing could wake it. I remember the feeling so clearly, it was like being encased in glass. I could see the world moving around me, people laughing, seasons changing, but I was separate, watching a life I couldn't touch or feel. The laughter of people I loved sounded muffled, like it couldn't get through the barrier around me. My faith, which had been my rock, felt like a distant memory. I'd try to pray, but the words were like stones dropping into a bottomless well, making no sound, no ripple. God felt absent. Or maybe I was the absent one, lost somewhere in the fog. The Bible says that the heavens declare the glory of God, but I couldn't see or hear it. All I felt was a deep, agonizing silence from the divine. That spiritual loneliness was the heaviest part. It wasn't just that I was unhappy. I felt completely and utterly alone in a silent universe. The modern world, with its constant pings and notifications, only amplified the emptiness. The endless scrolling, the curated perfection on social media, the 24/7 news cycle, it was all just static, a meaningless hum that highlighted the silence where my soul used to be. My pain wasn't a loud, dramatic thing. It was a quiet, slow erosion of who I was. It was the weight on my chest each morning, the sheer effort to get out of bed, the exhaustion that clung to me like a damp coat. It was the slow, terrifying realization that I was disappearing from my own life. That silence was my prison, and I was both the prisoner and the guard. The turning point. There was no lightning bolt, no big aha moment that sent me into the woods. It was more like the final tired sigh after holding my breath for far too long. I had run out of options. I'd tried to think my way out of the darkness, to reason with the pain, to force myself to be happy. Each attempt left me more exhausted. The emptiness was winning. On that day, the four walls of my house felt like they were closing in. The silence was no longer just an absence of noise. It felt like a living, breathing thing, and I couldn't stand it for one more second. So I just walked out the door. I had no plans. My feet simply started moving, carrying me away from my house and toward a small patch of woods at the edge of town I'd driven past 100 times, but never truly seen. It was an escape, pure and simple. I wasn't looking for God in nature. I'd pretty much stopped looking for God at all. I was just running from the crushing quiet in my head, hoping I could trade it for the neutral quiet of the outdoors. Hope wasn't even on my radar. I was just bone-tired and felt like a complete failure. I expected nothing. Maybe a few minutes of distraction before returning to the same suffocating room, the same suffocating life. As I stepped off the pavement and onto the dirt, it didn't feel significant. The world was still gray. The trees were just trees. The voice in my head kept up its loop of despair. I felt like a ghost taking my own body for a walk through a world that didn't feel real. This wasn't a spiritual pilgrimage. It was a last-ditch retreat effort to find a place where the silence wasn't so loud. The experience, the first whisper. I'm not sure how long I walked. It could have been minutes or hours. My mind was a storm of the same negative thoughts that depression hammers into you until they feel like truth. I was so lost in my own head, I wasn't paying attention to anything. The forest just a green and brown blur. I ended up near a small stream winding its way over a bed of smooth gray stones. At first, I didn't even notice the sound. It was just more background noise. I sat on a fallen log, buried my head in my hands, and felt the immense weight of simply being upright. And then, something shifted. It was tiny. In a brief gap between my anxious thoughts, a sound slipped in. The gentle, rhythmic gurgle of the stream. It had been there the whole time, but for the first time, I actually heard it. It was such a simple, unassuming sound, but it somehow cut through the static in my brain. I lifted my head and just listened. Gurgle. Swish. Gurgle. It was steady, unhurried. It wasn't asking for anything or promising anything. It just was. As I listened, another sound emerged. The rustling of leaves in the breeze. A soft, dry whisper, like a long, slow exhale. Shh. The wind would pick up, and the whisper would grow into a chorus of hundreds of leaves dancing, then die down again to a sigh. The stream and the wind began to weave together, creating a simple, natural melody. The water was the steady beat. The leaves were the light, floating harmony. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, my focus shifted from the chaos inside me to the world outside. I wasn't trying to meditate or be mindful, I was simply captivated. It was as if my brain, which evolved to register natural sounds as signs of safety, was finally getting a message it understood. Unlike jarring city noises that put us on high alert, these sounds seemed to be telling my body it was okay to relax. I felt my chest loosen, the tension in my shoulders begin to release. I didn't know science then, but studies suggest sounds like these can lower stress hormones and reduce our heart rate. I wasn't thinking about that, I was just feeling it. The sounds were washing over me, not with force, but with a gentle, cleansing power. They weren't erasing my pain, but they were creating space around it. A tiny pocket of peace in the middle of the storm. The revelation, the symphony of healing. As I sat there, wrapped in the sounds of water and wind, my awareness started to expand. I began to hear other voices in the forest's choir. The cheerful chirp of a bird nearby, the distant rhythmic tap-tap-tapping of a woodpecker, the low buzz of an insect flying past. Each sound was distinct, yet they all blended into a complex, beautiful soundscape. It wasn't just noise anymore, it was music. A symphony of water, wind, wood, and life. And this is where things went from relaxing to revelatory. The harmony of it all started to feel like more than a coincidence. It felt intentional. It felt like a language. And in that moment, the spiritual silence inside me finally broke. I felt a presence, not a booming voice from the sky, but a still, small voice woven into the sounds around me. It was the whisper of God, not in words, but in rhythm, in harmony, in the pure, living frequency of His creation. The Bible says, "For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made." For the first time, I didn't just know that verse as a concept, I felt it. God hadn't been silent. He hadn't left. He had been speaking all along through the glorious, intricate language of the world He made. I was the one who couldn't hear it. My pain, my depression, my own inner noise had made me deaf to the constant song of love all around me. A wave of emotion washed over me, so strong it brought tears to my eyes. But these weren't the familiar tears of despair. They were tears of awe, gratitude, and release. The feeling of being completely and utterly alone began to dissolve. How could I be alone when I was surrounded by this vibrant, living symphony? The rustling leaves felt like God's breath. The flowing water felt like his constant, cleansing grace. The birdsong felt like an expression of his pure, unstoppable joy. This experience of awe, a feeling connected to something so vast and beautiful, pulled me from the suffocating smallness of my own suffering. My pain didn't just disappear, but its power over me began to shrink. It was no longer the whole story. It was just one note in a much larger and ultimately beautiful composition. This was my spiritual rebirth. It wasn't about being suddenly cured. It was about the return of hearing. The realization that even in my darkest moment, when I felt totally lost, creation was singing a song of hope, a song of presence, a song of God's unwavering love. I had finally learned how to listen. The transformation, spiritual rebirth. Leaving the woods that day, I was not the same person who had walked in. The heavy, crushing quiet inside me had been replaced by a sacred stillness, a peaceful space where the echo of that symphony still lived. The world didn't magically burst into color, and my depression didn't vanish. Healing, I was learning, isn't an event. It's a process. But something deep in my spirit had shifted. A seed of hope had been planted. The change was small at first. I found myself breathing more deeply, my breath unconsciously syncing with the memory of the wind in the trees. That simple act became a prayer, a way to hand over my anxiety and trust a rhythm bigger than my own. The experience gave me a new anchor. When the old waves of sadness or numbness would rise, I now had a place to go in my mind. I could close my eyes and call back the sound of the stream, the whisper of the leaves. That auditory memory became my sanctuary. My relationship with God changed, too. I began to understand that communion with Him wasn't just about formal prayers or words on a page. God was speaking through the sunrise, the falling rain, the tough little flower growing through a crack in the sidewalk. Nature wasn't just a backdrop for life. It was the first Bible, a primary way God reveals Himself. This freed me from the pressure of trying to feel a certain way in my faith. It simply invited me to be present, to listen, and to watch. This encounter didn't replace my need for other kinds of support, but it became a vital part of my healing. It gave me a sense of belonging, a feeling of being held by something far older and larger than my personal pain. It reminded me that I wasn't some broken, isolated thing, but part of a vast, interconnected, and sacred web of life. The healing was not an instant fix, but it was a gentle easing of pain, a renewed will to keep going, and the life-altering knowledge that I was not, and had never been, truly alone. Integrating the healing, living in the symphony. That day in the woods was the beginning, not the end. The real challenge, and the greatest gift, was learning how to carry that sacred soundscape with me into everyday life. It became clear this wasn't a one-time fix, but a practice, a conscious choice to keep listening. I started taking sound walks, sometimes for just 10 minutes. I'd step outside, not to exercise, but just to listen. I'd listen to the wind whistling around buildings, the chatter of sparrows in a city park, the rhythm of rain on my window. I learned that creation speaks everywhere, not just in some perfect, untouched wilderness. This practice of deep listening started to change my relationship with everything. It helped me be present in a way I hadn't been for so long. Instead of being trapped in my head, I could anchor myself in the now through sound. It became a kind of meditation, a way to quiet the internal noise and connect with the peace that was always there, just under the surface. I also want to be very clear. This experience was profoundly healing for me, but depression is a serious and complex condition. My journey also included support from friends, family, and professional help. Nature didn't replace those things, but it became a powerful and sacred space for comfort and spiritual renewal that worked alongside them. Nature wasn't a magic cure, but it was a form of God-given therapy, a sanctuary where my soul could rest and remember its connection to Him. If any of this concerns you, I want to offer a gentle invitation. You don't need a grand expedition. The healing power of these sounds is right where you are. Find a tree in your neighborhood and sit under it for a few minutes. Take a walk and just notice the sound of your feet on the ground. Open your window in the morning and listen to the first bird. You don't have to force a big spiritual moment. Just listen. The rhythms of the natural world have a way of quieting the heart and making room for peace, for prayer, for whatever your soul needs. This journey of healing through listening has fundamentally changed me, and it's a journey I'm still on. I'm passionate about finding all the ways we can find peace and connection in this noisy world. If this story touched you, I invite you to subscribe and join our community. I'd be truly honored if you would share your own story in the comments. Have you ever had an experience where nature brought you comfort or peace? Your story matters, and sharing it could be a light for someone else. My world was once dark and silent. I was lost in an inner quiet that felt like an ending. But in the gentle sounds of a stream and rustling leaves, I heard a whisper of God that grew into a symphony of healing. I learned that He is never silent. His creation is always singing a song of love and hope. Sometimes we just must get quiet enough to hear it. The healing I found wasn't in an answer, but in a sound. It wasn't in a flashy miracle, but in a moment of pure, unfiltered listening. I pray that you too can find your own sanctuary in the soundscape of the world, and that you can hear the divine symphony playing just for you. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more episodes of clarity, confidence, and transformation.